Today, I'm speaking with Lisa Kurbiel, Head of Secretariat at the United Nations Joint Sustainable Development Goal Fund, which supports countries in accelerating progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals by integrating economic, social, and environmental policies and employing multi-dimensional and cross-sectoral approach to complex social challenges. Thank you so much for being here today. Before we dive in, how are you feeling?
Maya, it's so good to see you. No, doing well, thanks. It's a sunny day in Manhattan and telecommuting. The General Assembly is virtual this year, so I'm greeting you from our dining room table. So really delighted to be here with you.
Wonderful. And how have you been handling the pandemic? What's the new things you've learned about yourself, about the world, about business?
I've always been a believer that the world is a village and we all really need to work together. I think the fact that a virus that started in a village that I'd never heard of, really, in China, closed down the city that I thought never slept or would never close, has put my whole family into quarantine and you know, obviously had a huge impact of loss and suffering. So I think it reminds me that we should really look to each other for solutions and be open to the unknown, because we don't know what our neighbors anywhere in the world might bring when we need each other.
That's a really important thought to remember. You've placed these development goals in place. You work with some 170 countries and their territories. So you work with a lot of governments in the public sector on the policy level. Is that correct?
That's right. So Maya, the purpose of the fund is to bring the best that the United Nations overall development system has to offer. And we're a $50 billion impact per year across, you know, all the different agencies, funds, and programs. So you think of UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Fund. You think of the World Food Program. You think of the Food and Agricultural Organization. So when you look across the goals, we have experts and country presence almost everywhere, from, you know, active conflicts in Syria or Somalia to middle-income countries in Latin America that are now, you know, suffering from the economic downward spiral because of COVID. So the strength of the UN is really bringing expertise where it's needed, when it's needed.
Okay, so did you hear that? We want to gather all the experts on this planet to focus right here on what's going on in this next very important decade. And how does the fund operate? Can you tell me the nuts and bolts about it? Because I know there's a lot of venture capital and corporate people that we're reaching, and this is a new fund that's just started.
That's right. That's right. We're just about a year old, so we're still calling ourselves a startup. We were created through the General Assembly. General Assembly is all the member states of the UN, and they gave us a target of $290 million per year. We're at about 290 million overall at the moment, and we're seeking increased grants from member states. And essentially, you know, the generous members of the UN the governments have given money to us to now de-risk and capitalize investments at country level to attract venture capitalists. Because we recognize that many won't go first to Rwanda or Indonesia. But if the UN says that they're already on the ground, that they're working with the government, that they've helped structure the deal, and that they've put in the first loss money, we believe that there might be an opportunity to open some minds to a true and sincere SDG investment that we are, in a way, guaranteeing.
That is so cool. And so for the community out there that is considering, you know, investment in other countries, this seems like a path that would be a good bet to go with by engaging.
That's right. I mean, and the great news is we're developing the pipeline of investments into clusters. So we have the ocean and the blue clusters. So, you know, for all of those people focused on plastics, focused on sustainable fishing, focused on ocean-facing communities, or with an interest in particular countries in the world. So the small island developing states are those countries that are really vulnerable now, especially after COVID, because of their tourism sector really, drying up. And of course, global warming causing oceans to rise. So we have several threats that they're facing. So, you can actually look at our portfolio and you can say, actually, I want to be involved in the blue cluster, or I know about sustainable agriculture, or my biotech firm is looking at how to produce better seeds, and then you can lean into the agricultural cluster. So we're trying to make it attractive because we know the goals are very broad and sometimes can be everything. So therefore, we're trying to give you a bit of a menu of how colleagues might be interested to work with us.
I love that. I think it's been a great effort on your part, specifically on the language on your website. It's very rich with information, and so I encourage everyone to check out the Joint SDG Fund website. It's got a lot of information there, and certainly with the rising sea levels we're facing right now, it's causing mass migration. This is going to affect everyone. And so this is a super important area of focus right now. Is there a message you'd like to share with the private sectors, the corporates and venture capital? What is it that we don't know? If you were to come to Silicon Valley, say, for example, and give a talk and start bridging the things you're doing over at United Nations along with the private sector, tell us what that would be.
I think my dream is to really help those that haven't had the opportunity to be in a Somalia, in a Sudan, in a Kenya. I've had the real honor to work in places where even the smallest investment can save hundreds of thousands of lives, because some of the issues and the blockages and the bottlenecks are not complicated. They just need commitment, and they need an infusion of resources and some technical expertise to just help things flow. So to me, it would be, you'd be amazed what $1 million can do in Mongolia. You'd be amazed how you can turn around an entire piece of East Africa with under $10 million. And I think, so you're still investing. And of course, being able to promise the same return that Silicon Valley might enjoy with some of their investments is where we are slightly pausing, because we can't promise double-digit returns. But we can guarantee that, unlike any other investment, this one will save lives, and it will actually be a tipping point for the country. Because if there was no wind farm there before, building that wind farm is historical. And yeah. I think today's world, we've seen how delicate it is, but also how, in a way, some of us have all just kind of gone home and worked from home and telecommuted and gotten the food delivered. And to some of us in our privileged bubble, COVID really hasn't hurt us. But when you think of the slums of the urban cities around the world, where running water is a privilege, space is a privilege. Social distancing is not even a concept. Yeah. I think, to me, it would be about, could they open their minds to that next level of risk? Because Silicon Valley, venture capitalists, they eat risk for breakfast every day. That's what they do. But this is risk in a sense of going outside the borders and being global. And we know that's not easy, and we know that's not the norm. So we want to take on some of that risk, because this is it's normal for us to work in Somalia. It's normal for us to run, a whole city within a city in a Damascus, because Damascus is at war. So we can do that. But what if we put in a water treatment plant for the millions of refugees that are coming through there, so that we can be more efficient? That would be tremendous, but it needs a certain kind of investor. So I think your network would be great at identifying the unicorns within you're a herd of unicorns, right? By nature of being VC firms. Are there unicorns within the herd of unicorns?
Well, I have two things that came up for me in response to that. And that was starting with the small investment and the power of a small investment. And when I say small in Silicon Valley, it's $1 million, it's like 500K. But that's exactly what we do at IndieBio. SOSV is we take risk. We give a small investment, sometimes 250K plus some follow-on, and we invest in scientists, and we see the impact that they can make on a billion-dollar market or a billion people. And so that part is very important for minds to start opening to, is that these small investments can make huge impact. And then as far as you're working in other countries and de-risking the path to getting technologies there, there's a lot of startups in Silicon Valley that want to test pilots and run programs where regulations might be different, where there's no FDA. And I think that working alongside the United Nations in the context that you have would be super helpful, being able to bring the right people into the room to help these processes move faster. So that's one point I wanted to make in terms of the value of collaboration here. Mm-hmm. And lastly, like in terms of collaboration and partnerships, what's the best way in your mind? Like, how do you see this? Somebody's watching this right now and they're like, that sounds really cool. I have a small fund. We invest in human and planetary health, or we invest in clean tech or climate change. We want to connect with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal Fund. How do we want to engage? How do you suggest?
Yeah, no, I think, well, I mean, the immediate portfolio we have is literally looking for members of the investment community to join. So we're launching, we have an event next Tuesday. It's a side event of the General Assembly, which is currently being held virtually from New York. David Rubenstein of the Carlyle Group, Emmanuel Roman from PIMCO, Bill Ty from the ACTI Network. We've got some really exciting leaders in investment speaking about our fund. And from there, we're launching Investment Week. And we would love your members to tune in, to listen to us debate how best to start the Coral Reef Fund in Fiji with the government of Fiji, what that looks like. Their plastic, they have no recycling in Fiji. Their plastic is floating off over the reef and destroying the reef. The reef will destroy their tourism. Their economy is collapsing. It's just a downward spiral. So quickly, how do we innovatively pull that plastic back out? And there's amazing people who are funding the fishermen to actually pull plastic out while they're fishing, right? And pay for that so that there's an economic incentive. So there's so many ways to do a debt for plastic swap, right? You've heard for, debt swaps. What about debt for plastic? What about debt for a reef? So essentially they could join us in any of those conversations. They could see which one is a best fit. They could decide maybe something else is a better idea and shoot us an email and say, I'd love to open up a project in the joint fund with you focused on biotech because I'm developing this product. And then we could debate, well, which country does that fit with and what are their targets? And I mean, really, we have tremendous access because for every one of me in New York, there's 130 of people like me in each of the countries, right? They're partnerships officers. So they're looking for ways to make it easier and I know the UN can feel difficult to access. So we're trying to break down those walls and say, we're here, we're a tweet away, we're a text away. Please work with us because yes, we're 75 years old, but with that comes the strength at the country level. We're known and trusted by government ministries, by parliaments, by assemblies. These are the folks who make the tax laws. These are the folks who write the investment legislation. So let's build that together. Let's make it attractive for VCs to come into developing countries while also protecting their welfare so that they can also begin to build up their GDP. But no, we're really open, Maya, and we'd love to explore new ways. So maybe in the next podcast, you'll come onto our podcast and tell us what's
Oh
happening
my
with
goodness.
this one. Yeah.
I would absolutely love that. And I think that the powerful message here is that in light of everything we're seeing on the in the world today, what really needs to be highlighted is the innovation and the potential and the human potential that's all there waiting to be untapped, unleashed. And the more we come together, the more we have these conversations and collaborate, we are going to be moving, and I say it's a movement, this to reach those sustainable development goals by 2030. All of us must be engaged, and it's very exciting to me. It gets me up in the morning every day. But people like yourself, Lisa, I invite you, and we do so many events here in San Francisco and around the world that focus on human and planetary health. And your voice this message must be shared. And I think this is only the beginning of the truly beautiful and amazing things that we can do together. One last thing before we go into our closing. 2030 has arrived. What does that look like?
You know, I really believe that if 2020 has taught us anything, it's that, you know, now's the time for positive change, right? None of us want to go back to normal if normal means, you know, racial inequality and racial violence and poverty and people going to bed hungry. None of us want that. So could 2020 be that wake-up call where the world says, we're going to change this? And could investors be the ones, because they control? I mean, there's $30 trillion of assets in impact investing. So what if we started to really focus that through the lens of the SDGs? I mean, I think it would be dreamlike, because we would reach tremendous goals and we would be able to say we didn't lose that opportunity. And, you know, I have the honor of engaging with the Deputy Secretary General about the fund. And she was talking to me about this event we're having on Tuesday. And she said, Lisa, make the impossible possible. We must keep going. We have to tell the story of what the UN does, and we have to bring so many in, because the UN is the world. We represent all the countries. So how do we just keep bringing people together? So, you know, my dream is that we've started it in 2020. We use the decade of action to rev our engines, and then we just keep going up that mountain together. And I think others will join us. I think there's a whole untapped, I mean, you talk about, you know, untapped knowledge. I mean, the youth I've met in countries like Kenya and Somalia and Sudan, I mean, imagine, and this is without formal education, the things that they're innovating, the problems they're solving, just because they have to survive. But imagine if we gave them education, the resource that would come out of so much of the world. So I refuse to not be optimistic. So I will say we will get there. We will keep fighting.
So we'll get there. Please tell me about this event next week. Yes. And how can we sign up? How can we get everybody in there? Is it a public event?
It is. Yeah, no, we're really thrilled. So again, the Deputy Secretary General, Ms. Amina Mohammed, is going to be our host for the event. And we are delighted and honored to have the Prime Minister of Barbados. So she will be our keynote. And, you know, Barbados is in such a unique space in the Caribbean, tremendous role looking at, you know, debt swaps for climate change, really innovative financing structures. So she's going to speak a bit about the vision of that in the context of the SDGs. And then we have this panel of unexpected partners, right? David Rubenstein, co-founder of the Carlyle Group, Emmanuel Roman from PIMCO, which is a huge player in the SDG bond arena, Bill Tai, who is the first investor in Zoom, let alone leader of the ACTI network and the XTC Challenge with Richard Branson. And then Karen Jampton, who's the director of Sweden's development cooperation. And Sweden is a huge player in the guarantee debt equity space around the world. So they've got a lot of expertise in what does work. So we're just going to open it up for a panel about what can we do when we start to mix the power of PIMCO and Carlisle with the UN? I just think we're really up for it. So you can find us on our webpage, which is jointsdgfund.org, and you'll see the pop up. And yeah, you can sign. It's a Zoom call, like so much of our world today. So all are welcome. And of course, from there we'll be starting the investment week that I mentioned, which is the following week. So from there they can hear a bit more about that, and then yeah, keep following us. And we're on Twitter also, Joint SDG Fund. And we'd love to have people give us their thoughts and reactions. We'd love to stay in touch, Maya, with you and find ways to work together. So the sky's the limit from our view.
That's wonderful. And for the investment week, please send me that information. I can share it with our network. We have an alliance with Mayfield Fund, which has $2.5 billion in assets under management. They've taken on the human and planetary evolution as their main goal. And so this is starting at the top. We are all in this together. Fantastic. And I just, I'm excited that you've been here, and to dive deeper into what the United Nations Joint Sustainable Development Goal Fund does, please visit their website and stay in tune with their events. Thank you so much for being here. We will be in touch.
Thank you so much. No, you're really, you're so generous, and I can see that you're with us, and I feel that energy, and I think that it's contagious. I really think it is. We have to spread a good virus, right? We have
a good virus, yeah.
Let's spread it everywhere. Everybody hopeful and positive, and
and let's focus on the world that we want to build.
That's right.
Not the world that we think is falling apart, but the one we want to build.
Exactly.